with education sector matters because thousands of matriculants will face rejection in 2022 because South Africa's public universities are unable to meet the demand for space. The country has seen a rise in accredited private institutions which have launched across the country, offering a vast array of degree courses which are equal in status to those offered by the public universities. Let's talk more about this then. We're joined by education expert Atelisha Harilal. A very good evening to you, Atelisha. Welcome to News at Prime. So just how vast is the list of options, shall we say, for matriculants in the new year?
Well, we're hoping that we're going to make it slightly larger. I think what's become apparent to all of us is that our public institutions, there's simply not enough spaces to accommodate all of our students. And the private education sector, which is registered, accredited and recognized, must take hands with them and I think do something that is important and valuable to change the lives of South African youth.
And just on that, right, I was mentioning the public versus private, and in terms of options in the private tertiary education space, how many options do people have?
Well, there are a lot of options, and I think what is key for us in exploring the private education space is that students and parents must ensure their due diligence. I think private higher education has often been plagued by fly-by-night institutions or those who enter into it not with the best intentions in mind. So I think the government of South Africa has made it very easy to verify that your institution is registered and accredited. And if we look at registered and accredited institutions, then the options are indeed vast to obtain your degree, diploma, higher certificate, or your master's, PhD, doctoral qualifications.
But the problem with some of the accredited private institutions is often price, which remains prohibitive for many South Africans, isn't it?
Indeed it is. I think, the issue of the government subsidies and all of that does come into play. But I think what is key for students to understand is there shouldn't be a restriction on your dream or your ambition to achieve success. And a lot of us feel that if we don't take the traditional route and study in a university via contact learning, then somehow we've missed out on the opportunity, whereas we are able to take the distance learning route, which is slightly more affordable and offers you a valid study option. So I think the range of affordability in both the public and private sector covers a large area of the students who are trying to access education. The key is just to assess what is possible and what is affordable within the private education sphere. Because there are premium qualifications that enjoy workplace and international recognition, and there are the same premium qualifications that are available via the distance learning mode that students can access.
And the main concern for both matriculants and parents as they choose their various courses, as they select the courses now at the end of the year and going into the new year, is about how employable they will be as graduates, which is a question that we're still dealing with across both the private and public space, even with, for example, the TVET colleges.
Absolutely. Employability is key on the mind of parents. In essence, a parent, a sponsor, a guardian makes an investment in the hopes that the child will find a better future upon graduation. And I think that's one of the key sort of areas that we as the tertiary education sphere, whether we are private or public based, need to address, is this issue of employability and then industry alignment to make sure that when students graduate, their qualification contains what the professionals in that industry deem as appropriate and as a marker of employability. And that we're not just providing them with an education that is based in theory and in critical thinking, but also providing them with those intrinsic and important soft skills, which often mark the successful interview candidate from the one that's not so successful. So the ability to communicate in an office, to recognize how to function in a space that is more formal than perhaps you are used to. And I think all of those softer things become key in increasing the employability of graduates and ensuring that they can meet the growing demand of the industry. I think through time, what we've discovered is oftentimes technology in industry is developing at a pace that students who graduate often find they're learning on the job. And that ability to think critically and engage properly with your qualification is important. And I think the other aspect is the aspect of work integrated learning, which should provide you with workplace experience in the duration of your qualification. And that is key because that experience is invaluable. We often joke and say, we're looking for a graduate so-and-so, but 10 years experience, 5 years experience. And how do we help young people to bridge that gap? And I think the answer lies in work integrated learning.
I want to pick up then on the point you're making about technology. We've learned about how much technology can be integrated into tertiary learning, especially during the pandemic. But is it a space that we've explored enough as a country in terms of permanent study? Do you still have to go to a campus physically in the long term to learn in the best way possible?
Look, I would love to be able to say technology is the answer to all that ails us. Unfortunately, we don't come from a society where penetration of the internet, access to appropriate technological devices is not equal. It's part of the great inequality we as South Africans are dealing with on a daily basis. And to give you a personal example, the first time I actually touched a PC was the day I got on my university campus for the first time. And I know from my work in student recruitment and meeting students across our country, this is a challenge that a lot of them face. And access to data is another thing. So, as an educationalist, we were chatting at a recent conference and a comment was made that we were trying to do 21st century education for many years, and there were doubters and objectors, but COVID pushed us to make that transition in a manner that was very quicker than we would have anticipated, and to find success there. So I think whilst for some members of the student community who have access to data, appropriate devices, and the affinity to technology, yes, there is this growing notion that I can study effectively from wherever I am if my institution offers me an effective virtual learning platform or environment. But at the same time, I think there are students who are looking to read a book, to have that intrinsic peer learning experience, to be on a campus and addressed by a subject expert, to practically carry out a task on a daily basis, because technology just is not the possible connector they can get because of where they're situated, doesn't have internet or accessibility to devices. So
but also as people,
it's not as clean cut as yes or no.
As people, Atelisha, I'm just thinking we all learn so differently. I mean, I look at my group of friends who I was with from primary school, high school, some at varsity, and just the approach and how some would be able to grasp from reading a textbook. Others wanted to hear a lecturer talk through a passage, for example, to better remember it long term.
And this is also the challenge that we face. Some people are kinesthetic learners, meaning they have to touch something with their hands, build a project, or you learning design, you learning fashion. It's impossible to do that wholly virtually. Others are auditory learners and they need to listen in order to learn. So addressing the different type of learners is a challenge for us in the field of education via digital medium. How do you offer sufficient touch points to ensure that every different type of learner sitting in the virtual classroom is having an exciting and engaging teaching and learning experience?
Atelisha Harilal, good to speak to you. Thank you so much. Atelisha is an education expert speaking to us as those matriculants continue to await the release of their final results early in the new year, and we'll bring it all to you right here on Newzroom Afrika as soon as those results are out, and we'll speak